Hi guys, this is Dr. Sadasivam once again with you, giving you the current events of the fourth week of April. Today we are going to look at some important topics. Number one, record food grain targets for 22 to 23. We're going to talking about how India will be the top milk producer in the world. We'll talk about foreign exchange reserves. We will talk about mutual funds at a record 20 lakh crores in the month of March. We will also talk about finance ministers meeting with the International Monetary Fund managing director. Capex commitments, lot of discussions happened around that topic, and we will also talk about how the government's wheat procurement is going to decline during this year, and we will talk about NHAI, which is National Highway Authorities of India's monetization of two more roads. Very important question from the civil services exam point of view. Then we will talk about India-China growth projections. We will also talk about banks, bond markets, and we will also talk about how India can exceed its export targets in the coming years. Now, record food grain targets for 22 to 23. Good rain forecasts and fairly well distributed rainfall during the monsoon is expected during this year. So we have a target of 328 million tons of food grains. Remember this target. Very important. 328 million tons of food grains. There are rising hopes of further exports of farm products. There has been no problems with fertilizers and other inputs like quality seeds and other things. The Kharif season, which is beginning in the month of June, your paddy, pulses, oil seeds, maize and other cereals will continue to be major crops. Now if you look at fertilizers, 35 million tons of fertilizers will be needed to produce 328 million tons, approximately 10%. Remember, it's very, very important. As on date, urea is the most widely used fertilizer, covering more than 50% of the requirement. These questions are very important in preliminary exams in IAS, IPS. They shoot a lot of googlies, especially on food grains. Now we're going to talk about coal crunch that is happening at an all India level. Now, as far as the independent power producers are concerned, the government has allowed them to pass on higher fuel cost till the month of December. Normally what happens is, if you don't allow them to pass on this, no company will produce power, right? For a loss. People come into business to make profits, not to make losses. So if there is a loss, they will shut down their electricity production. But you can imagine how much of an impact it may have on the economy of the country, and therefore the government has allowed them to pass on higher fuel costs, but only till December. Now if you look at 8,000 megawatts imported coal-based power plants like your Tata Power, Adani Power, SR Power, etc. Because some of these companies have stopped production of electricity, especially after the consumer states refused to pay for the rise in global coal prices. Now, if you look at coal prices, the coal index has increased 30%, especially after the Russian-Ukraine war. Guys, one thing very, very important. Gujarat's methodology of calculating the pass-through tariffs is generally assumed as a benchmark for the other states. Pass-through means whatever price increase happens because of importing, they will directly pass it on to customers, and the model that Gujarat has been adopting is assumed to be one of the best that every state government wants to emulate. Now the government cannot afford to keep these power plants idle. That is one of the reasons why the government has come out with this decision. Also remember that the peak demand for this month can touch 210 gigawatts. That is why the government wants all the power plants to have enough inventory of coal to supply at least 160 gigawatts at least during the peak hours. The total demand is 210 gigawatts, right? That's for information. One more good news. It is a news for me also. India produces more than 8.5 lakh crores annually milk, and that's no mean figure, guy. It is 22% of the world's global production of milk. It is fourth in the world after your US, China and Brazil, right? And yes, that is all. I can't think of anything else. One of the highest milk producing countries in the world. That's a news to me also. Now, as far as the foreign exchange reserves are concerned, we've already talked about foreign exchange reserves, and today we have more than $640 billion of foreign exchange reserves. Quickly, I would like to talk about why foreign exchange reserves is important. It is very, very important because the whole world saves its foreign exchange reserves in dollars. But on this, there is a very, very important topic, guys. The reserves have always been, part of the economic discourse for a very long time. There is a very, very important paradox called as Robert Triffin paradox. I will be putting up a video on this particular topic. What happens is any country whose currency becomes a global reserve currency, they need to run continuous deficits because they need to keep on borrowing just in order to provide sufficient supplies of assets to the whole world. That's what the paradox is. That's a difficult economic subject. I will be putting up a detailed video on this subject, and do watch that video, right? Let's go to the next topic. Complicated economic subject. The share market has been falling continuously. People are saying that there is a death cross that is happening. Let me explain to you what is a death cross. Death cross is a place where your 50 DMA means daily moving average. Your 50 DMA, if it is below the 200-day moving average, it is called as 200 DMA. That's called as a death cross pattern for the first time since March 2020. Very, very dangerous situation. Apart from that, there is another cross which is called as a golden cross. When this 50 DMA is going above the 200 DMA, that is when stocks are expected to boom. That will be kind of a breakout. Okay, now we are going to talk about the mutual funds and equity assets. Now, there is an influx of money into this mutual fund segment that indicates a very strong and resilient economy. Now, mutual fund assets have crossed 20 lakh crores in the month of March, 20 trillion rupees. The Indian market cap may have fallen down by 8% from the peak levels, but AUM means assets under management. It's a very, very important term. They have hit a record of 20 lakh crores in the month of March. When you talk about it, it includes everything: your equity funds, your arbitrage funds, your balance funds, etc., etc. Now, the local funds are the second largest equity assets under management at the end of March 2022. With FPI, that is foreign portfolio investors, with AUM of approximately 47 lakh crores. Now you will understand, despite heavy selling by FPIs, we are able to hold the market intact. Market has just fallen by 1,000, 1,200. I'm talking about Nifty. 20 years back, if this had happened, we would have fallen by 10,000 points. It would have been a complete disaster. Now, we are not completely dependent on FIIs because our own retail investors, our own mutual funds, they have emerged much stronger in the past few years. Now, we are going to talk about the finance minister's meeting with the IMF, that is International Monetary Fund, MD. Kristalina Georgieva is her name. Don't worry about the pronunciation. They have discussed with our finance minister, and the discussions about how India has been following the accommodative fiscal stance accompanied by major structural reforms and very strong monetary policies, especially in the post-pandemic recovery phase. Now, if you look at India, India is expected to record the highest growth rate amongst the large economies of the world. Right? If you look at Capex, The government has raised the capex by 36%, guys. 36 is no mean deal. Government has raised by 36% to 7.5 lakh crores, which is 7.5 trillion rupees. Only to continue with the investment-led recovery of the pandemic-hit economy. In fact, capex during the last year was only 5 lakhs, but now that has been increased because that talks about the resilience and the will of the government. And apart from that, certain other discussions happened in terms of how India will be helping Sri Lanka and Nepal in this hour of crisis, right? Now we are going to talk about the government's wheat procurement. Now this may fall by half during the current season because the current season is beginning in a few weeks from now. That's because of few reasons, because private traders have become very lucrative. The prices have gone up in the outside market. This is another very important figure that you need to know. India expects a production of approximately 111 million tons of wheat. That is also an import. That is because wheat is exported to many countries. The price of wheat in the outside market is more than the MSP, and we've already talked about it in one of the earlier videos about wheat. Now we are talking about NHAI, monetization of roads. We have talked about the national monetization plan. There is a separate video on that. Please go through that, guys. Now, when you talk about these monetization, some builders come to our mind. We have Adani, we have IRB infrastructure, etc. They have all bid for these assets. Now, two important things you should know. There are TOT, which is toll, operate and transfer. Remember that. That's very, very important. Toll, operate, transport. This might come in a competitive examination. TOT, 73 kilometers between Varanasi and Allahabad. And the second is a 125 between Gwalior and Shivpuri. Under the TOT model, these builders have the right to operate, maintain and collect tax over the next 15 to 30 years on important highways, which are all leased against a one-time upfront concession fee that needs to be paid directly to the government. Now remember this. This may fetch enterprise value of approximately 2300 to 26 as far as TOT 9 is concerned, and then maybe 1500 crores as far as TOT 10. That is toll, operate and transfer. Some questions may come or not, we don't know, but in the interview when people talk about infrastructure, capex, little bit of data like this will put you in good stead, right? You may have done your examination well, but if you quote these data well in the interviews, that will decide whether you get into the government as an IAS officer or a Group 2 officer. These things are very, very important. Data is very important. Now we are going to talk about projections of India and other countries as far as GDP is concerned. In spite of all these issues, India is projected to grow at 8.3%, whereas China is only 4%. It's a matter of pride for every single Indian. India will remain the fastest growing major economy in the world despite the 0.8% cuts announced by the IMF. They have reduced it, but in spite of that, we will cross 8%. Something very, very important, and we all need to be proud of this accomplishment. And that is all for today, guys. And this is Dr. Sadasivam signing off till we meet again in a new video series on current affairs. Bye bye. Jai Hind.